Today on the Athlete's Mindset, I'm honored to welcome Darin Erstad, one of the most accomplished athletes to ever come out of the University of Nebraska. A two-sport standout for the Huskers, Darin went on to an incredible 14-year Major League Baseball career, most notably with the Los Angeles Angels, where he was a three-time Gold Glove winner, two-time All-Star, and a 2002 World Series champion. Known for his grit, leadership, and work ethic, Darin's impact on the game extended beyond his playing career as he returned to Nebraska to lead the Husker baseball program as the head coach from 2012 to 2019. In this conversation, we dive into Darin's journey from Lincoln to the major leagues, his mindset throughout a long career, and his perspective on coaching the next generation of athletes. I'm excited for this conversation. Let's get into it. Darin, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yes, very glad my dad got this set up as he played with you at the University of Nebraska. And that's kind of where I want to start is what was that transition like from going from North Dakota to University of Nebraska, and what made you choose the University of Nebraska?
Well, I basically chose Nebraska because nobody else recruited me. Let's just say times were a little bit different back then. There really wasn't any online presence and putting videos together and putting them online to have people see. So you just, it's kind of word of mouth. I was very fortunate at the time. Some college coaches coached Legion Ball. So the assistant coach at Nebraska was our Legion coach when I was 16. And he ended up giving my name to John Sanders at Nebraska and started recruiting me and went down there for a football game. Actually got to see University of Washington and Nebraska play. It was a fantastic game. I think Mark Brunell and Billy Joe Hobart brought them back to win, and I think they won a national title that year. But just the whole experience, the atmosphere, I was sold right on the spot and eventually committed there.
Yeah. And you had an extraordinary career there. You hit 410 and 95 with 19 home runs and 261 hits. What kind of led to that success, or what was your mindset during that season?
Oh, there was a guy named Mike Ashman, came from California, and he was a hitting coach, and we had good hitting coaches before that, but he just kind of simplified everything, and he just said, just hit the ball back up the middle. And he goes, get comfortable, hit the ball back up the middle. And at that time, that's what I needed. He didn't need to overthink it. And just kind of lined me up and had a few fall early in the season. And he just got some confidence going. And then, well, I just found a lot of holes, but it was, it was a big learning year for me to go through that and handle a lot of things. And wish we would have got to go to regionals, but it wasn't in the cards.
Yeah. I know my dad's told me plenty of times just the differences between regionals now and back then. But how did you I struggled with consistency in college. I think a lot of college players do. Even when you were coaching, it's tough, it's not as long as a major league season, but you're playing so many games. How did you just maintain consistency in college?
I honestly think college is harder than professional baseball. I mean, it's, professional baseball, you got one thing to do is keep your job. And, in college, holy buckets. I mean, first off, you're younger and, time management and going to school and having to drop your backpack off at the door and then lock it in for the coaches. And, oh, I forgot about the 6 o'clock workouts in the morning before school. And the discipline you have to have in college, I was amazed. And even, I was a long, long time ago, 30 years ago, I was in college and I, when I coached, in the 2000s or when was it, like 2012 through 2019 or whatever, the amount of time asked of the student athletes, it was mind boggling. I mean, I just tip my hat to what kids do these days. And but it's a great learning lesson for life and how to handle yourself and learn how to just prioritize things. And it just, yeah, but it's no joke. College baseball is hard. College sports are hard, and but it's also a great learning experience.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, even tougher for you being a two-sport athlete in college. Can you tell us just what that was like? I mean, to be a national champion and then also just balancing football and baseball.
Well, let's no, let's say a sport and a half athlete maybe, because like being a punter and kicker, you had plenty of free time to do stuff. So it was a little bit different. If I claim myself as a two sport guy, I'm going to get beat up by, some of my former teammates because we were in there playing video games while they were out there going crazy. And so we,
Yeah.
we had plenty of free time, but it's still, I mean, you do have to manage your time, and it's a lot to ask. But at the same time, you just put your head down and you get into a rhythm of what life is in college, and you just do it. And next thing you know, it's over and you miss it. So
100%. It goes by so fast, and I feel like it's not until you're kind of out of college that you realize there were a lot of things I probably could have done differently, done better. Um, did you expect to go first overall in the draft?
um I mean, after that, the summer before my junior year, I had a pretty good year in the Cape Cod League, and then I came back and I really didn't do anything with the baseball team. I just did football that the fall of my junior year, and then you meet with scouts, and I don't know. You read. I mean, it wasn't again. It's not like there was internet and like it wasn't everywhere. You just get a Baseball America. You'd see that, and you'd see your name in there, and and as the season went on, and I was doing okay, and then I totally tanked it in the Big 8 tournament. I just hit like crap, and I went like 1 for 15. I was like, "Oh, I just blew that. Nice job, Darren." And then, uh, got done, and got home back to North Dakota, and a couple days before the draft, when the assistant GM and the head of scouting show up with the Angels media guide and some stickers, I kinda had a feeling they probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have flown all the way out there to do that with, so I kinda knew then.
Yeah. I mean, you played 14 seasons, and one of my favorite things that I've heard you talk about is just not wasting at bats. Can you kind of explain that just for, young athletes, young baseball, even softball players, and just what that meant to you?
It's just I mean, I guess it just boils down to having a plan every time you go up there, are you gonna execute it all the time? Absolutely not, and the 2 biggest things is, 1, you're gonna, like, let's say in a big league season, if you're an everyday player, maybe, get 600 at bats, right? And maybe a little bit more than that, whatever it is now. I'm just making up a number, but it's gotta be pretty close. But let's just say that you probably 200 of those, you're locked in. I mean, like, locked in, and, can get a hit or not. And then there's probably 200 that, you're like, kind of in the middle. Like, I don't feel great, but I have a chance. And then you probably have 200 at bats where you're like, I've never hit before in my life. Or you're facing just a fantastic pitcher, or it's a day game after a night game. And that first inning, you're tired, or it's really hot outside. There's so many factors that go into a long day of travel. You get to a city at 6 in the morning and you got to play at 7 with no sleep. Like, it just, there's so many things, but the whole idea is not wasting at bat. It's not wasting a pitch, whatever it is it's just getting your mindset to the exact same place every single day. And that is honestly the hardest thing about baseball, because you and when I was in AAA, I'll never forget this. Like, it literally, the there were guys in AAA that were more talented than I was. There's no doubt. I mean, they had absolute rockets in the outfield. They hit absolute bombs. But in baseball, man, you gotta show up every day, and when you don't have your game, and this is what I'd say to kids. I mean, Ken Revisa, who is their mental guy, rest in peace, but, I mean, he'd talk about, that's what separates everybody, man. And you got your green light, yellow light, red light. Green light, anybody can play. Yellow light, most people can play. When you got red lights going off and your swing feels terrible and you're tired and you're distracted, that's the separator in the game of baseball, is who can slow it down. Who can go, okay, what's working today? I got to figure out what I can do to help the team win today. And it takes a lot of time and maturity to figure out how to do that. But it's man, if it was easy, there'd be just everybody's pretty much the same, and as the higher you get, and it's just something's got to separate you. And to me, that's the biggest difference, is the consistency of your routine and how you show up mentally every day.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it perfectly. I don't know if there's a better way to put it, because I feel like I was a guy like everyone who was sometimes in that kind of yellow light. And I think it's in the yellow light where do you really make yourself to be? Because if you're still, a guy that can put the ball in play, get some hits when you're in that yellow light, and you stay away from the red as much as possible, that's a guy that's going to continuously just be in the lineup. When you're playing 14 seasons, how do you, not ride the roller coaster of a long major league season? Because it's hard. I know you said consistency, but are there any other kind of
I
ideas that
wrote it a
help?
lot, Justin. I wrote it a
Yeah.
lot. Not to
Yeah.
sit there and say that it's easy. There's a lot of ups and downs in the middle of that stuff. But the one thing I did take pride in, and I learned quickly, and back to the point, like, I mean, some days I always said it was like a folded up lawn chair, like the old lawn chairs that just were demolished, made of aluminum. And that's how my swing felt a lot of the time. And, but it's like, okay, what can I, like, back to my point, what can you do to help the team? Well, I said, one thing I can always do is play defense. So no matter where I was always going to help our team defensively. And the other thing I could do, I could really run the bases and, like, just get on, whether it's getting hit by a pitch or I don't care. I mean, even if you hit a ground ball, just don't strike out. Like, I know it's a different game now, but like anything I can do to just get on base and do something positive to help the team. Like, to me, that's kind of what that's where I learned that is to, hey, if we're going to win, that's what's going to have to be done. And you just put your stats to the side. And at the end of the day, if you got a W, it's like, good, here we go. And, you know, I took a lot of pride in that. And I actually probably wasn't as good of a hitter, but I got better defensively. And that made me more valuable because I could play more positions and helped me for a few years as a bench player. But, um, the other thing that I had to learn this, and this is very, very difficult, but a guy named Gary DiSarcina played a long time with the Angels. He coached at many, many different places. But he always said, he said, Ersty, he goes, anybody can lead when they're hitting 330. He goes, you show me somebody who hit 215 and can still cheer for his teammates and be positive for them. I go, that's a leader. And that always stuck with me because it's so true. It's like, you see the front runners who go 5 for 5 and they're happy. And then you get a guy goes 0 for 5 and you win, and the guy's whipping his stuff all over the locker room. And it's like, you start seeing that and you're like, okay, you see little things like that and you start piecing, you're like, okay, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. And I don't want to be like that. And that's probably the last piece of it, is to be able to be positive and support your teammates when you're struggling inside. That is a tough, tough one.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all been there, especially in college when you have a certain amount of roster spots, only so many guys can play. And it seems like towards the end of the season, guys get kind of their role. So you're either a guy that's in the lineup every day or you're not. When it comes to leadership, you just pointed out like being a guy that even when you're down, you're still bringing, the juice and bringing the energy. What also are some traits of just being a leader?
Well, it's a trick question. It just goes back to this, it's consistency and honesty, it's just, y- y- you just, I just think people, it's just so obvious when you win and somebody has a bad game and they only care about themselves. You go through the line, and as a coach I see more now as I get older. I know it's harder for younger kids, but you can just pick that person out who had a bad game, but you won and he's mad, and you can be mad, but you just got to find them and pick somebody else up. Somebody might be madder than you are. And just those type of things are so important. Um, and it just goes back to the consistency. And I know it's very difficult for young players. You know, you, you're so worried about yourself and getting yourself locked in and having success on your own, but that still means it doesn't mean you can't be a good teammate. I mean, it's just, it's just bringing energy. The negativity in a locker room, as you know, can just be just a destroyer. Nobody wants to be around somebody that's bitching because they're not playing, or that a pitcher or a guy booted a ball and it cost him a couple runs. Like, it's fine if vent a little bit, but we all have those people that are constant complainers, and it's just in a long, long baseball season, that stuff it's just exhausting. And what will happen if you let that fester as a team, you get about 2 or 3 of them, and, misery loves company, and they'll destroy you from within. So that's why it's important as a team, and, I would look more, everybody would, you spend so much time, like, looking at your top guys that are playing well, and you forget about, the foundation of your team and the guys that maybe not get as many reps. That's the foundation of your team, because they're the ones who are gonna tear your locker room apart from the, you know, inside out. And to me, it's just about, Coach Osborne was always, I always watched him from afar, and he was the best at it. Like, I'm pretty sure he spent more time over at the scout team in practice than he did with the ones. And he would go yell at those guys, and he knew every guy by name. And I saw that. I go, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like,
Hmm.
they're like, a scout guy gets yelled at by his first name from Coach Osborne. They're probably thinking he doesn't even know who he is.
Yeah.
And you do that, the consistency, and you do that all the time. It's like, whoa, it's like, that's real. And in baseball, Mike Scioscia for me was like that. I mean, I- honestly, when he came in the clubhouse, I always say you couldn't tell if you went over 5 or 5 for 5 or his dog got hit by a car on the way to the park, because he was the exact same way every day. And to me, the consistency of that is so important. Easier said than done, but that's where you try and strive for.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think that honestly might answer this next question, but you win a World Series in 2002. What kind of makes a World Series team?
You know, I've heard I think that I don't think there's one particular recipe. Obviously, if you have a good culture and a good group of guys and they're really good players, that's deadly, you know. But then if you look like the Oakland A's when La Russa coached them, he said, "I don't care if you guys all hate each other. We have better players and we're going to win. Go do your job," you know. So it's like there's different ways to do it. And then you see teams that have the best players and they don't win. And so what's the right way? I don't know. You could say we got lucky, but you know what? Over 162, it's kind of hard to get lucky. And
Yeah.
we were very consistent, and we did stay healthy. That was a big thing. In a couple other years we had really good teams, and we just didn't stay healthy. So we were fortunate to not lose too many guys, but it just, you get that. If anybody's played on a good team, I don't care if you have good players or not, you get that vibe. You just can't wait to get to the yard. And there's just some special little something there. And you guys just know when you go on the field, it's like, these guys aren't going to try as hard as we do. And you just can feel it, and he just builds on it. And that's kind of what happened with our team.
Yeah. I mean, one of the great things about baseball, and I think the thing I miss the most is when you show up to the yard, you're just hanging out with your best friends pretty much for, 3 to 5 hours just playing baseball. So, and I think that's kind of what makes it enjoyable is just having a positive impact on the guys around you. And I think that's what sets teams up for success.
Percent.
Yeah. I want to transition now into your coaching experience. What made you, want to become a baseball coach?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I always wanted to play baseball. And obviously, the Grim Reaper taps you on the shoulder and says you're not good enough anymore and you're getting old, and they kick you off the train. So it's like, okay, now what am I going to do? And Mike Anderson, he was the head coach at Nebraska, and he was gracious enough to give me the volunteer job to just kind of see if I'd like it. And unfortunately, that year just didn't go very well, and everybody got fired, including myself. And we, I just cleaned out my little office, and I was like, well, I guess we'll figure something else out. And, uh, you know, it was a couple weeks, and Coach Osborne called me into his office, and he, uh, he said, well, I don't like any of my candidates. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that, coach. And I go, "Well, what can I do for you?" He pulls out his like yellow notebook, and he starts like, what are your strengths? And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do we do? Like,
Yeah.
he started like interviewing me on the spot, and I was like, I don't know about this. And because it's a lot of time. I mean, anybody who like coaching in the professional ranks or college, to do it right, you got to spend a lot of time away from your family. And I had already done that quite a bit as a player.
Mhm.
And, but coach asked me, he goes, Darren, we need to get that culture fixed at Nebraska. And that's what you do in locker rooms. And he goes, we need you to do that. Well, when he says something to you like that, it's like, okay, can't tell
Yeah.
him no. So that was kind of like, all right, here we go. And then, it was just kind of learned on the fly, and just all the structure of coaching. Coach Bolt and Coach Silva were awesome in helping out, and just getting, they'd obviously been in college baseball, and I just learned quickly, leaned on them, and did my thing and figured it out.
Yeah. That's awesome. What do you think was kind of the biggest adjustment going from, being a player to coaching and leading young men?
The For me was the communication of, I might like a guy or I might have an issue with a guy, but unless you talk to them every day, and explain to them how you're feeling, the kid's not understanding where they stand, or, they might think that I'm walking around and I'm mad at them if I don't talk to them. Just the communication part, so, it kind of goes back to the Coach Osborne thing where he talked to everybody on the scout team. I made it a point to walk around during batting practice or during stretch and check in with every single guy every single day, and just to make sure they're doing okay. And to me, that was now I'm kind of an introvert. I'm not one to, go out and go crazy and do stuff, publicly, and it takes me a little while to get to know people and warm up and share my thoughts. And so that was it was an adjustment for me to do that. But then once I started seeing that it meant something to them, then it was pretty powerful, and had a lot of great conversations. And boy, I miss that stuff, because those during BP or during before stretch and just having those conversations and checking in and seeing how they're doing in school, or how their family's doing, or their girlfriend's doing, or I mean, who knows? Car could have got stolen, or their stereo got stolen. I mean, as you know, in college, something's always happening, and it's not always good. And sometimes people just need somebody to listen to them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's perfect. I'll be honest. My second year at Cal State Fullerton, I kind of struggle with that. I think there were days where maybe a coach wouldn't have a conversation with me, and I think I just went on a rampage in my mind, just thinking like, do they hate me? Do they think I like if I go 0 for 3 in this inter squad, do they think I'm terrible and they're going home thinking about it? And I think it was really tough. And I think that's one thing that you excelled at was, getting on a personal level with these, your players. And I think that just helped them out so much. And mental health has kind of changed a lot since you were a player till now. What was it kind of like dealing with things, back when you were playing?
Well, we had with the Angels, Ken Ravizza was with the Angels, and at the time, I'll just be completely frank. When he came in the locker room, everybody ran to the lunchroom so they couldn't talk to him, because it was just it wasn't part of the fabric of baseball to have a mental coach, and he had a lot of great stuff and a lot of people needed it. But it was, I was still in that era of, tough guy, suck it up, rub some dirt on it type of thing. And, um, and obviously that's changed thankfully over the years, because there's so many things that have been improved, from the mental health side of things. And, it's just, and now man, it's just, it's okay to talk to those people. People have their own, I mean, shoot, look at golf. I mean, every guy has their own person, like full
Yeah.
time, like walking around with them. And it's a real thing. So, that's probably, of all my regrets, like not having that in place, for a lot of situations. That would have been something I would have utilized a lot more. And I'm not talking the, you know, yoga, the center, like I'm pretty high strung, and I've tried that stuff and it just doesn't work for me. But there are other things that you can do to, incorporate into your stuff and settle down in certain situations. And, you know, I I had some stuff that I used, and yeah, I mean, there's times where the little hamster up there gets going too fast and you gotta slow it down. And, I would have liked to have some more tools in the toolbox, so to speak, but can't really do that now.
Yeah. What were some of those kind of tools that you had though that, when you would needed to take a deep breath or a step back just to kind of, get back into the moment?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of corny, but it was like I'd be on deck, or, you could step out a little bit more in the batter's box. But for me, it was always my calming place. And my calming place was in Jamestown, North Dakota on the reservoir. In the winter, I'd go out 5 miles out by myself in the middle of the lake and go ice fishing and just sit there by myself for hours. And I just visualized myself. I could almost, it could be like super hot out, and I could almost feel the chills on my arms from how cold it was. And that was my like reset button. And, for me, I tried I tried Ken's, circle, stepping in and out of the circle. That didn't work. I was always in the circle. I couldn't turn it
Yeah.
off and on. So there's, there. I just you play long enough, you find little bits and pieces of what people do, and you're just like, oh, I like that. I don't like that. I like that. I don't like that. And that's the journey as a player and as a person. You find what works for you, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. Find something else. But that's the journey that's fun.
Yeah. I mean, you don't play 14 seasons in the big leagues without, making some adjustments and figuring out what works for you. Back to kind of, you as a coach, one of the favorite things, I heard you say was when you get done playing, realize the game is a lot harder than you think it is. I remember you told me that, and I
Ah,
was coaching high school baseball. This past spring, and we'd strike out looking. A guy would strike out looking on a fastball right down the middle. And in my head, I was like, I probably would have hit that 450 feet. Like, what are we doing? And then I'm like, I've done that same thing. Can you just kind of touch on that a little bit?
it's called the forget syndrome. So, right, we always the running joke in the big leagues is every time, and it basically pertained to guys that play in the big leagues, and then they go up into the booth and they're sitting up there ripping on all the players, and they like when I played, and they did no wrong, right? So we always said that when it was your last day in the locker room, that you get an injection of the forget serum in your ass, and so I knew I was done. We were playing at the Mets place, and it was my last game, and it was Aaron Boone's last game too, but he had to have heart surgery. Like he had a hole in his heart. So we knew his last game. So I was like, that's his day. We had David Wright get the third base bag for Aaron to get it. And so nobody knew it. I just did it myself. But I had always said my last day, I'm going to walk out backwards so nobody could ever put that serum in my butt. So I walked out backwards out the door of the last locker room that I ever was in as a player. And I've never forgot how hard it is, 'cause it is freaking hard.
Yeah. I think it's especially the consistency, staying positive. There's so much that you just look back at. And like, I look back now, even watching college baseball, and I'm like, these pitchers aren't even that good. And I was like, I was striking out to those guys like semi bats. Like, I can't just keep saying this to myself. So I'm glad you told me that because it made it a lot easier to coach. And along with the coaching side, what did you want your players to take away or walk away from the University of Nebraska with after you coached them?
Well, degree first, that was a big one. And it was kind of fun because I didn't finish. I left early, and then I go and I was taking classes, like one class every semester, like on the road. I'd take an online class. And then when I stopped coaching, I had to take my last like two or three classes in the classroom. And I ended up being with about five of my former players that
Yeah.
we like study groups with the guys. It was like the greatest study group ever, like to get to be with those guys. But I couldn't ask them to get their degree if I didn't. So it took me 27 years, but I got it. But so to me, I mean, let's be honest, most people aren't going to play pro ball. You got to finish up your school, and that's the first thing. But I think it just goes back to, it doesn't matter what you do. It's just, you just have to be consistent, and you just have to be a good person. I mean, it's just, when things go bad, so what? Next pitch, it's just like, it's the same thing in life. That's just how it works. And it seems really basic, but it's super hard. And to just lift your head up, and when you're having a bad day, you know what? Go find somebody that's having a worse day than you, and lift them up, and watch what it does to yourself. And when you have a bunch of people doing that in a locker room or in a business, it's a difference maker. Because you know how many people walk around with their head down and are miserable, but there's strength in numbers. I truly believe that. I mean, again, I don't have all the little tricks for stuff, but we did a power circle where we'd go before practice, like especially in the mornings, we'd all gather around and look each other in the eye, and you just feel it. You just feed off of each other, and like those type of things, like that was important for me to have, like, that kind of stuff, because that lasts. That stuff is real. That will be with you for the rest of your life. And then when you do that as a group, what you also have, and it's hard for them to understand this, but now you see it when I go to Robbie Pelkert's, like wedding or something, and you see 10 guys there, and well, they all like each other. And it's like, well, why? Well, because you did it right when you were here, and you talk to them about it. It's like, hey, you're going to be close 15, 20 years from now. I said, "But it starts here." And they're like, "Yeah, whatever, you're old and you don't know what you're talking about." But now I'm older and they're old and I'm like, "Oh, really? Huh? How's that for you?" You
Yeah.
know, it's like, so, and they're like, "Yeah, you're right, coach." But it's, I mean, it's the same. It's how it always is. And younger kids know everything and older people can't understand, can't relate, you know, and they probably can't, but as they get older, it's fun to see them have kids and grow up and they're good people. And it does warm my heart. And I miss having the opportunity to affect kids like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you put it perfectly. One thing I love is just the most positive impact you can make on yourself is a positive impact on someone else. And I think you kind of just touched on that. And that's when you have a room full of guys that do that. And, from your time playing and coaching, you don't remember, guys' stat lines from every game. You don't remember, if they struck out here or this game. You kind of just remember how they treated you. And I think you just put that absolutely perfectly.
As did you, because
I
you
want
said it
to,
better than I did right
yeah.
there.
No, no. I mean, you're the one you've done it for years and years. So, I got two more questions. You had a long playing career and a long coaching career. What do you think, if you had to pinpoint one thing, what are you most proud of?
Oh, never thought about that. I will, on a on a sport level, like a result level, giving the Angels their first World Series. Uh, Even now to this day, going back, you go to the grocery store, and how many years that was, I don't even know how many years ago, a long time ago, 23 years ago. And you go to I'll be out there and go to the grocery store and you have a surfer walk by and go, "Hey, thanks, Ersty." And they just keep going. Like, it meant something to them to give them their first one. So it was just like, I get those not all the time, but you get a lot of them. And so just that pride of being part of that. The other one, obviously, being on Coach Osborne's first national title team. Um, he said to me, when I signed professionally, and I didn't play, because he wanted me to play football that year. And I get to the Angels locker room and I have this FedEx, and it's a Nebraska football letter and it's congratulating me on making the big leagues, and all the football coaches signed it. And it says, "You're still a better football player than baseball player." He never thought baseball players were athletes. Well, I told
Yeah.
him when I got on the football team, the first year I was on the football team, or the only year, I said, "Coach, it's going to take a baseball player on your team to win a national title. You know this." I was being cocky and I didn't know. And then, of course, I
Yeah.
find out later Turner Gill obviously played professional baseball and there are other great two-way guys. And it's like, but at the time it was funny, but just those are two big ones, from just the first, for Coach Osborne and, for the city of for Anaheim and all of Orange County. Those are big deals. And then, you know, from a, from a personal standpoint, what I'm probably most proud of is the guys that I coach, for the most part, still want to talk to me. Like, it's like I might have screwed up in some games. I might not have made all the right decisions, but when I still have people reach out to me, or I see, people at football games or baseball games or weddings or wherever it's at, a lot of them still talk to me. So I think that's a good sign. It's like, that's, if they didn't like you, they probably wouldn't reach out to you. So I'm glad that I probably did it the right way, and would have liked to win some more games, but the bonds that I formed with a lot of those kids were pretty special.
Today's episode is brought to you by ReLyte Hydration, my go-to for staying fueled and refreshed. As a former athlete, I know how important it is to stay hydrated. And ReLyte makes it simple with clean ingredients and essential electrolytes. My two favorite flavors, lemon lime for that crisp, classic kick, and mixed berry when I want something a little sweeter. Whether it's before a workout, during a long day, or after training, ReLyte keeps me going. You can try it yourself and get 15% off with my code Athletesmindset at checkout. That's Athletes Mindset for 15% off at ReLyte. Stay sharp, stay hydrated. All right. Last question I ask all my guests. If you could go back, let's say to your playing time at the University of Nebraska or your first few years in the minor leagues, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Well, I think it goes back to a lot of stuff we've been talking about. Is just, it just don't be so hard on yourself. It's like you have a couple bad games, and if you don't have a positive attitude or, just kind of take a step back and, I was one to beat my head against the wall and go to the cage for, 2 hours and really not do anything to get more tired. I think just probably understanding that, look, it's a long season. You're going to have bad at bats. You're going to have bad games. And at times I wasn't as consistent as I like to be. And I let that dirty snowball roll down that hill and it got pretty big sometimes. And I think early on um, that would have been good advice to get for myself to, hey, you know what? It's a long season. And, I heard a lot of guys talk about that play. I didn't play much minor league baseball and got put up because Angels organization wasn't very deep and they put me up there pretty quick. And I didn't learn some of this stuff, but man, the grind some of those minor leaguers had to go through to get to the big leagues, and you learn a lot about yourself. And um, I would have liked to listen to them a little bit more at that time because boy, they had some good stuff. And it's just one of those things. Just say, look, especially in baseball, it's a game of failure. We all know this, and you're gonna suck. You're gonna have great games. Just show up the next day, and you know what? Just be ready to play. Be ready to go to the post when the bell rings, and let's see what happens. Have a plan of what works for you today, and I'm gonna take that out there and see what happens. And then when it's over, do it again. I probably carried stuff with me too long, um, and that would have been something I would have liked to work on when I was younger.
Yeah. I mean, all your insight you've just talked about from, playing experience to going through the lows, going through the highs. I really appreciate your time and just thank you again for coming on.
You bet, Tristan. Anytime.
Yes, sir. Thank you again to Darin for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.